All right, good morning, gentlemen. All right, we got a nice daf ahead of us. It moves, so it moves and does not get into the complications that we had yesterday. So, Mitzvah Shema, the goal today is to finish the parak. Mayor's not here. We'll be good.
Who's here?
Is he here? I didn't see him. Right? Today is daf nun vav, Sekas Nazir nun vav. So we left off almost eight or so lines down from the top. So basically, we had the Mishnah that was discussing which days can be counted, which days cannot be counted, and so Rav Chila, let's just go back to Rav Chila's statement. He just said at the end of the Mishnah, he said, nope, turned too many pages. So Rav Chila said, Amar Aleph, that when he's maschil mayna, he's only we're talking about only certain, not all nazirus. Do you pause your counting? He says, and then we want to learn out that some of the nazirus you can even continue your count even though he is a mitzayra. So that was what he said, and then we had one kasha from the complicated case of a suffix tuma and suffix mitzayra who was a nazir, and now b'yod meisif Rav Ashi. So Rav Ashi has another question. Ainli ela yimei tuma. Now, there's different periods when it comes to mitzayra. There is if he's a hesker, no, muskar, right? Where he so let me go over here. So where it's basically we're uncertain, we have to see whether it turns into not muchlat or hechlet, as it says over here, is something which is confirmed saras, and in such a case he's a vadai mitzayra. And he has to shave at the end of that period. And then there's also his counting of the days after he was confirmed, and it goes away. Then he needs 7 days for Yemei Sifra or the count, and then he shaves his head again. Now, so that was just a little back of detail. Now, the Yemei Sifra Rashi, then the top or so, and then Vav Aleph. Ainli Yemei Tuma. Now, when it comes to a nazir, I know the nazir, when he's tamei, does that count towards his count, right? So restart. Yimei chaluta minayin. How do we know that somebody who is a mitzayra, right? Chaluta, yimei chaluta, right? Minayin. How do you know that those do not count towards his count? In order to be indeed has confirmed saras. Medina. We can learn it logically. You may tuma megaleach, or maybe korban. If a person comes tummy during his nazirus, he has to go ahead and shave his head and bring a korban. You may chaluton of a person separately has saras, he's right hachlet. So megaleach, maybe korban. He goes ahead and shaves his head at the end of his saras and brings a korban. And ma you may tuma say no minyan. And by the days of tuma, they do not count towards his nazirus. So too will say the days of Tumas Hachlet, right? Muchlat, Muchlat, those days do not count towards his count of, let's say it was 100 days or 30 days, whatever it was for Nazir. So we'll get into that. So I says, low. Even Marty made Tumas, so no, it's different. You made Tumas. If a Nazir just becomes Tameh, Tumas Mei, Shechem Evatam, and it's a kaidman. There's a special rule. If he becomes Tameh, there is Nazirus. You got to start again, go back to go, right? As opposed to Yemei Chaluto, we said you have to stop. You can't count those days, but then you pick up and you're still on day 63, and then you continue counting from there. So we can say Kavachaymu. Man Nazir Bekever. So if a person is Mekabel, we also saw this earlier in the Masechta. The person is Makabel's Nazirus while he's in the base of Kvaros. So obviously he can't start now, but we say he does not have to go ahead and cut his hair. He doesn't have to shave his head, even though one who becomes Tameh in the middle of his Nazirus, he has to start over and shave his head. But if he starts off in the base of Kvaros by Tuma, wait till he become Tahor, and then you can count. You don't have to go ahead and shave your head. Uman Nazir Bekevish is Roilis Galeach. Nazir's ein oilam lo min a minyan. A Nazir is mekabel in the base of Kvaros, Nazirus, so his hair does not be removed, and that hair ultimately can be the hair that he shaves at the end of his Nazirus. Once he becomes tahor, then he counts as 30 days or whatever days it is. Nevertheless, those days until he can start his Nazirus don't count towards his count of Nazirus. So Yemei Chaluto Shein Saaro Nazirus Nazirus Lakash, okay? right? So his Yimei Chaluto, right? If he becomes a Mitzayra Hachlet, right? During his Naziris, he has to shave his head to fulfill to the end of his Saras. So certainly, right, since he has to remove his hair in that case, certainly those days do not count towards his Nazirus, right? In the case of the basic Kvaros, you can leave your hair, it doesn't count. Over here, where you can't even leave your hair, certainly those days do not count. Ve'li Ela Yimei Chaluto. No, in this case, it's not. Both. Right, yeah. So, right, it's working the same here. To use.
Mukhlas is when he's
what's that?
Right?
What's that? So the rule means you can argue from logic. Argue from logic.
Not the Hesker.
Right.
Yes,
He is the question. He is the question, but he's Vadai coming. He's a Vadai right? Hesker is that we're not sure if he has coming. Wait 7 days, come back to the Kohen afterwards. Here, Kohen, you are Messiah. Go out, and you have to wait until it stops. I'm sorry. Yes, right, exactly. The Eliela, right? And that was the PSR is the PSR one, right? The Eliela Yimei Chaluta. So I only know now we're talking about Yimei Chaluta when he's confirmed Mitzayra. Yimei Sifra Menayin. So what about the days of his counting? The days of his counting means after the Tsaras have passed, we still have to wait 7 days in order to become Tahor. That's called Yimei Sifra, right? Those are his days of his counting. So Ve'li Ela Yimei Chaluta, we say over there that don't count. What are Yimei Sifra Menayin? V'dinu, and you can maybe make a logical argument. Ma Yimei Chaluta Tegalachas. Days of confirmed saras requires shaving afimei sibra, and so too days at the end of your 7 days of counting, you also have to remove your hair. So it seems to be the same. And the days of vadai saras don't count towards his counting of days of nazirus mina minyan afimei sibra yafim. Right. So too, his days of counting should not count. His days of 7 days of counting till the end of Saras should not count towards his counting days of Nazirus. So Afimei Asger, okay. You might Yachal Afimei Asger, okay. You might think also this is by one who's a Muskar, right? One who's a Muskar is someone who we're unsure. Go ahead and wait 7 days, then come back to us. So you might think those 7 days do not count towards your Nazirus. Yachal Afimei Asger, okay, and we can make an argument. A person who is vadai and mitzayra, so he's matame mishkav ma'ishav, right? If he's sitting on something, it can spread tumah the same way. He may has gero matame mishkav ma'ishav. It has the same laws of being matame something during the days of confirmed saras or only suspected saras. And just like we said, the days of for certain saras don't count towards his days of Nazirus. So too, I could say the days of his suffix saras also don't count. So Marta Love, you say no, you can argue. Even Marti Bechaluto, you make Chaluto Vadite saras is different. Why? When you're done with your Vadite saras, you have to go ahead and remove all the hair of your body. Or maybe carbon, bring a carbon. That's the reason why. That's the reason why you don't count those days when he's a vadai mitzayra, because he has to shave at the end to bring a carbon. As opposed to somebody who's only suspected, we're not sure. He could come back and be tahor. So he does not require shaving and a carbon at the end. So it's different. Maybe the reason why we don't Vadai Mitzvah count his days towards Nazirus is because he has to shave at the end and he has to be on carbon. But a person who's only suspected Saras, we don't know. He could be tar. So therefore, maybe we can continue the count. Exactly. Therefore, Yalu Laminion. Therefore, those days should count as a minion. So Mekan Amru. So therefore, we say from here, you may Sifra, you may Gemara, Ein Olam in a minion. Right? The days of his counting. And also that the days of his saras when he's confirmed over there to have it, those do not count as minion. But days of zav and a zava, and also a mitzara who's a hasger, only one who's suspected of saras, hare elu lo. those count towards him. Now, this was the brisa that we just brought as a kasha and Rav Chisa. Now, Ketani Niyas, nevertheless, it says, Lo mimar to be made tuma shechem mevata be'es hakayman. We said the days of tuma, i.e., when a nazir is tamei, right? So he said be'es hakayman, those you have to start over your nazirus, your count, as a kayman tamer be'en chalutai. So too, right? So he says, "Oh, you might have to make too much shechem mevatos as a kayman tamer be'en chaluta, as opposed to a chaluto that you do not restart." Now, Pamai. What are we talking about? If we're talking about just a short Nazirus, Chabid and Gidol Seir. So obviously, Mechuta has to shave his head at the end if he has indeed tested positive for Tsaras, right? He has to remove his hair. So obviously, we're not talking about Nazirus Muatas. Elav, the Nazirus Maruba. Rather, we're talking about even a long period of time. Let's say he has a year of Nazirus. So those days do not count towards Nazirus. And it says over there that those do not count towards the minion. Alma, indeed, we see from there, indeed, we see from here that any days of tsaras, you make chaluto, those, even though it doesn't start over, those do not count towards nazirus, and therefore there is no difference as when you make the case in the Mishnah. All cases, we say that our Mishnah is definitive that if you have, if you're a muchlat, right? Then those days do not count towards your nazirus. You got to wait till the tsaras has passed, and then you continue the count. But then you continue the count, right? You start over from day 63 because that's when you first tested positive for tsaras, right? So then you continue, but nobody says that those days, any period of time count. The only days that would count, we said towards it, is if it's suspected tsaras, which is Hester.
In which case, the count continues.
Right. All cases by tsaras, the count continues, but those days don't count towards the count of the Nazirus. As opposed to Tuma, if it comes to Tuma space, then you restart from the beginning. Then you start from the beginning.
So tsaras just
expose you. Mishnah. Now your Mishnah. Mishnah says, Omar, Rabbi Eliezer, now the Gemara moves even quicker. Omar Rabbi Eliezer, Mishum Rabbi Yeshua. Says the name of Yeshua, and is pointed out, this is Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania. When he's referencing Rabbi Yeshua, so he says, any tuma that a nazir is, as we learned earlier, is to go ahead and shave his head for. So those are, one is chayiv, right? One is chayiv kares to enter into the bias, into the mikdash, right? There's one is prohibited to enter the mikdash while he's tamei. If he has the level of tumas mace that a nazir has to go ahead and shave his head for, such a person is chayiv. And any tuma that he does not have to go ahead and shave his head for, we said a small amount of, not enough bones under an ohel, right, or not enough blood, then since the nazir is not megalechla, ein chayvin ala al bias mikdash. He is not chayv bias mikdash. However, Amar Meir leiteza kalam in asheretz. Now, I don't want to say that because if one is tamei tumas sheretz, he does the sheretz and then he enters into the mikdash, same penalty as one who is matami tumas mace. So therefore, I don't want to say somebody who is already matami tumas mace, even though it's to not the degree where a nazir has to shave for, where you say he's pater minatorah. So therefore, he says no. Rabbi Meir disagrees with Rabbi Eliezer, Mishum, Rabbi Yeshua. Fine, so that was the argument. Now, Zak the Gemara. Rabbi Eliezer, Mishum, Rabbi Yeshua, Gamar Lo. Rabbi Eliezer said this in B'Shem Rabbi Yeshua. V'Hamishum Rabbi Yeshua Bar Memel. Right. So our Mishnah, right, is should be not Rabbi Yeshua, the classic Rabbi Yeshua, which is Rabbi Ben Hanania. Rather, it should be Rabbi Yeshua Bar Memel Gamar Lo. Right, the tiny one, right? So Amar Rabbi Eliezer Shalachli le'ardas kaya matzatzias Rabbi Yeshua ben Pazar. Right, everyone had his name, right? Very popular name at the time. Josh, right? It's a very popular name. Matzatzias Rabbi Yeshua ben Pazar. Right, I had like 4 Joshes in my class when I was a kid. Right, Matzatzias Rabbi Yeshua ben Pazar. Rosh Shahaya Yoshev v'Dam Lifnei Rabbi Meir. He was darshan before Rabbi Meir b'halacha, and he said, "Kol tuma min hameis." So this was right. Rabbi Eliezer said this. He heard Rabbi Yeshua ben Pazar saying this. He says, "Call tuma any tuma that a nazir would have to go ahead and shave his head for and restart his nazirus. Such a person is chai mishum bias mikdash. And any tuma that tumas meis that he would not have to go ahead and shave his head for, mishum bias mikdash. He's not chai for bias mikdash. He's not chai karus. Samarlo. So he responded, this should not be lighter in your eyes. It's not true because it shouldn't be any less than the Mitame Tuma Sheretz. Samarti like Klumata Baki Rabbi Yeshua Bar Memel. Are you not familiar with Rabbi Yeshua Bar Memel? So I'm like, hey, no, of course. Kacham Rabbi Yeshua Bar Memel is what he said, Mishum Rabbi Yeshua. So basically, Rabbi Eliezer heard this from this Rabbi Yeshua Bar, who heard from, he heard from Rabbi Yeshua Bar Memel, Mishum Rabbi Yeshua, who heard from his Rabbi, Rabbi Yeshua Bar Chananya. Hold to him, Minamesha, Nazim Megalechela, Chayvela Mishum, Bias Mikdash, hold to him, Minamesha, Ada, Nazim Megalechela, Ain Chayvela Mishum, Bias Mikdash. So he says over there, so he heard B'Shem Rabbi Yeshua Bar Memel. So that's who Rabbi Eliezer heard from. So where it says, okay, maybe Havi Mishum Rabbi Yeshua Bar Memel, right? So he said, so okay, maybe we should, maybe we should learn it the other way. Now, maybe our Mishnah should say, Amar Rabbi Eliezer Mishum Rabbi Yeshua Bar Memel. Maybe there was two words that are left out. So no, Shma Mina, Kol Shmaitza the Misamra the Beit Tlasa Kadmai Basrai Amrina. Matzati La Amrina. Anytime if you have a limud, right? So A heard from B heard from C. So the important ones to mention is A, and from C, from the original source, and the one who's saying it now. You could say the one in the middle, but you don't have to. Just like over here, even though Rabbi Yeshua Bar Chananya was the original, and Rabbi Yeshua Bar Memel was the chain in between, that doesn't necessarily have to be stated. And we have another case like that, right? Where we see there's a chain of limudim, and some are left out. And Amar Nachum Halav Rabbi Misha. Shakibo me Abba. So this is what I heard from Rabbi Misha that heard from his father. Shakibo me Azugos that heard from the pairs that referred to Tanaim. Shakibo me Navim who heard from the Navim. Halacha Moshe Rabbi Sinai. Right? They learned from Moshe. So what was the case of there? Nothing really to do with our case. Bizareya, Shabbos v'chardal, b'sheves. One who goes ahead and plants was dill and mustard. The Shnayim Shloshim Mekayim in 2 or 3 places. Shenai saying Peya Mikol Echad B'Echad. He has to get Peya. He has to leave out a corner from each and every one. Ilu Yeshua v'Kalev like Chashim. And it doesn't say right that the Navim heard from Kalev, who heard from Yeshua, who heard from Moshe. Why'd you leave out the middle links? Shema Mina and Dealer from As long as you have the original source and then the last source, then whatever you have in the beginning is right. Then you're safe, and everything else is just details. Shema Mina. Well, we have cases. The Gula was brought because it was you say really b'shem, but that was the original one person was set for. But over here, if you have the chain of events,
the whole string,
right?
Give all string of people. Not only that, but what I'm saying is that names.
They could bring 3 names, but you don't have to. Now, if you're going to bring 2 names, don't bring the name that he heard it from. Bring it from whoever you heard it from, who he heard it from.
I would say like the middle person is actually more important because he or she.
But here, you have to know the original source because if you only heard the second person in the chain, you get where did he hear it from?
If I heard something like 7 years ago, and I don't know who said it, who the middle person is, I don't trust them.
But you can go back to the original source. But you need to know the original source. Right.
All right,
Right, then you can-
weiter.
Right.
Yeshua ben Hananya.
Right, that's what I should remember. Right, and therefore that's why he stated. So Mishnah says, "Amar Rabbi Akiva, Nanti lifnei Rabbi Eliezer, ma im etzem kaseira sheina matami adam ba'ayel." So we saw that if an etzem kaseira is not matami a person ba'ayel, hanazir megaleach al mago v'al maso. If the nazir goes ahead, even though he's not matami ba'ohel, but if the nazir touches it, then he has to go ahead and shave. So Ravi's dub saying a quarter lug of blood that does matami a person under a canopy. It's obvious that a nazir should have to go ahead and if he touches it, he has to go ahead and shave for it. A Ravi is done. Summerly, Mazeh Akiva. What is this? Akiva, what are you saying? Ain't done in Kavachaimer. You can't learn a Kavachaimer in this case. We'll soon see why. When he went before and asked and requested and hacked up Rabbi Yeshua, Amar li Yofa Marta Elakain Amar Halach. All right, no, it was good that you didn't learn the Kavachaimer in this case. You can't learn in the situation. You can't because Lamaisa, there's a Halach Lamosh Messina, there's a Halach Lamosh, we'll see there's a Halach Lamosh Messina involved, and that's the reason why I can't have a Kavachaimer.
So the Kavachomer
Right. So
Oh.
why doesn't it work here? Good question. So Zuck, the top of the page, Iboilu. So which one is the halacha? Which one is the halacha? Moshe, we see now that you can't really do it. Is it Iboilu? Atzam Kasaira halacha? Is the Atzam Kasaira? No, the halacha of maga, right? If you go ahead and touch it, he has to go ahead and there's not time about OL, but if you go ahead and touch it, he has to go ahead and make a layout for it. Is that the halacha Moshe we see now? The revis dam kavacham, revis dam, the halacha revis dam is that it is but ohel. Yeah, learn from a kavachemer. They ain't done in kavachemer malach, and therefore we can't learn the something with the revius dam which learn from kavachemer from halacha meshis. The Moshe Sinai. Aduma revius dam halacha. Maybe the revius dam itself is halacha Moshe Sinai. That's in kasayra kavachemer. That's in kasayra we only know through a kavachemer, and therefore they ain't done in kavachemer malach, and therefore we can't learn the revius dam, which is the halacha from the atzam kasayra. So Tashbak, listen. Atzam Kisayra halacha. The halacha is by Atzam Kisayra is halacha Moshe Sinai. Revius dam and the halacha is by revius dam. There's some time, but OL is the kavachemer, and then nevertheless they ain't done in kavachemer. We can't learn the kavachemer. The halachas of dam from may halacha Moshe Sinai of the Atzam Kisayra. Sahaj Allah. Mitzvah Shem. We will from here tomorrow. All right, shkoyach. All right.